Welcome to Bad Game Summer, a special time of year where I play some of the worst games I can find for your enjoyment. Also, a special welcome to the many new subscribers I picked up over the summer. I'm grateful you like me enough to stick around. Now, I believe I've said it before, but I'm a big fighting game fan, and that's across all franchises, whether it's Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Tekken, or whatever. I may do a video about my top picks one day. Today's game, however, is not a top pick. It's a top pick if I worked at Guantanamo Bay in their torture department, or maybe even Alligator Alcatraz. That name sounds like the setting of a level in Donkey Kong or The Adventures of Bayou Billy. I remember when Fight Club was first announced for the Xbox, and I was actually looking forward to it. Not because I'm a big fan of Chuck Palahniuk's book, I never got around to reading it as I was slowly making my way through Harold and the Purple Crayon and Everybody Poops, or ever really liked the movie that much, though I did see it a couple times and found it enjoyable, if that's even the right word for it, and Meatloaf's man boobs still haunt me to this day. Also, the phrase Meatloaf's man boobs are something I don't ever want to utter out loud again. No, I was looking forward to it because at the time the graphics looked decent and the fighting looked brutal, and back then I still trusted developers enough that if it looked pretty and was violent, I was pretty confident that it could at least be halfway decent. Many of us gentlemen who have dated less than mentally stable women in our youth can agree that if it looks pretty and appears fun, we still need to keep our wits about us as things can go awry very quickly. Fight Club was released on the Xbox in November of 2004, about 5 years after the 1999 David Fincher movie with Brad Pitt and Edward Norton. And yes, Meatloaf's man boobs. I and many others will probably say that the game came out a few years too late if the intention was to capitalize on the success of the movie, but that's only the start of its problems, as the surprisingly bland gameplay and overall crummy production quality kept it from being anything resembling a success and was forgotten just as quickly as it was released. I'll put it to you this way. In 2025, in the age where everything retro is hip and overly priced again, if your game is still on the loose shelves of a retro game store and not under a glass case, it's because the game doesn't have much value. Many times, there are a lot of copies of it still in circulation, or really, it's just because it sucks. Fight Club's reputation has not helped it over the years, or actually maybe it has, since people like me review it now. Onto the game, Fight Club sports a few modes: arcade, survival, training, versus, and finally story mode. If you're looking for a basic fighting game experience, then you'll know what all the basic modes are already. You can either choose characters from the story, or the game also features a very shallow character creation mode where you can make a really generic looking character, pick a fighting style, assign stats as if you care how this person is going to grow and progress, and then you put them up against other fighters, and with each victory you'll get more points to spend on stat upgrades. Depending on the mode that you're playing, your character can also succumb to too many injuries and have to retire, not unlike some of your favorite sports ball athletes or MXC contestants. And therein lies one of the many big problems with this game. The fighting, while it showed potential and looks good in still pictures, is sort of like Lois Griffin's Meatloaf.
I find this meatloaf rather shallow and pedantic.
There are 3 classes of fighters in this: brawler, martial artist, and grappler. No matter who you play, each of these classes has the same moveset for each character, so if you're playing with one grappler, for example, you're going to have the same experience with all of them. It's not like playing Street Fighter and knowing that Zangief, Hugo, and Armika are grapplers but have totally different moves. This really kills the replayability of this game because if the game were actually fun, it's not, you now have the incentive to try just 3 of the entire roster of characters in order to get the whole experience. Also, taking into account that the brawler and martial artists are very similar, though the martial artist is exponentially better for the record, and you just narrowed that down to just 2. Each fight is, mercifully, 1 round. You'll beat each other senseless until someone's health whittles down enough that what looks like a road construction sign shows up, and then you can do this game's version of an X-ray move from Mortal Kombat, where you'll do one of 2 things: break their arm, which is admittedly pretty gnarly looking the first couple times you do it, or some other move that kind of looks like you're breaking the guy's spine or lower back or something. It happened so quickly that I couldn't tell exactly what was happening. These are all accompanied by the delicious sounds of celery being broken into pieces. Even here, each class has access to the same 2 finishers, and if your opponent decides to tap out, then the fight ends and you win, and it also robs you of that glorious opportunity to break something. If they decide to keep fighting, then you can beat on them until they're unconscious. That is like 90% of the fighting in this game. If you get your arm broken, you can still get up and fight with it, sort of like the Black Knight in Monty Python. I thought this was hilarious because if most people were to have their arm broken in a fight, especially the graphic way that this game does it, that person would be on the ground, screaming in agony, and there's no way that that person is getting up. Beating arcade mode will give you that character's ending cutscene, and then you're done. After beating the story mode, I went into arcade and unlocked just a few characters' endings because frankly, this game was such a chore to play through that I had no desire to do it more times than that. Among those times were for Tyler Durden himself and unlockable character Fred Durst, frontman for Limp Bizkit. That's right, if you ever wanted to beat the tar out of Fred Durst, you can do it to a mildly accurate version of him in this game. Also unlockable is Abraham Lincoln, because why not have that dream matchup of Honest Abe versus Fred Durst? That requires beating arcade mode with every character, however, and to be frank, I'd rather put my face in a bag of Japanese murder hornets.
7 years ago, I played Fight Club on the OG Xbox. It was a piece of shit, so I turned it off because I thought it'd be more fun to go to the theater instead.
Depending on the difficulty, the computer in this will vary between being super easy and basically standing there and letting you hit them in the face with the same combo repeatedly, to super frustrating and fighting like they're Psycho Mantis and reading all your controller inputs and countering everything that you're doing. Story mode is just barely better than arcade mode, merely because it attempts to follow the story of the movie in the most hilarious, busted, crackhead way possible. You play as some no-name side character who is on a search for Tyler Durden, much like Mary's brother was looking for his baseball,
Have you seen my baseball?
and sees the events of the movie happen through his own eyes. Now, this isn't that bad of an idea. The problem is that the cutscenes are all still images with voice-acted lines except for the beginning and ending scenes. It looks like they had half the game's budget cut and just had to make do with bits and pieces of what they already had completed. Also ridiculous to me is that you play as some no-name who just takes down each of the characters until you get to the very top, and then you see the game's rendition of the movie ending. The whole thing is stupid, albeit in a pretty funny way. The whole story looks like it was done with in-engine graphics too, and I think that's the biggest problem. If they were to do it with something more stylized or even like illustrated or something and not use the in-game engine to come up with these still pictures, it would have looked a lot more intentional and therefore better quality. The audio in this is some of the worst mixed I've ever encountered as well, with the sound effects being almost totally absent or like really quiet and muted. You'll barely hear attacks land, nor will you hear most of the grunts and groans from the fighters, and despite their mouths moving when they're victorious, they don't actually say anything. Like, this is a weirdly quiet game. Honestly, if I had to pick what the strongest part of the game was, I'd say it was probably the graphics. I mean, they're not amazing or anything, but they get the job done with some of the characters resembling the actors from the movie. Obviously, some liberties are going to have to be taken to look sort of like Brad Pitt or Meatloaf without looking so much like them that royalties would have to be owed. Something else I noticed is that the shirtless characters, sorry not sorry Bob, are weirdly shiny and chiseled in the Xbox version, like they got a hold of Diddy's supplier of baby oil or something. And that's about all I have to say about Fight Club. Despite it being a bit of a dumpster fire, I do think that if this game had another 6 months to a year of development time, it could have actually been a halfway decent, sort of simpler, more brutal cousin of Tekken or its fellow Xbox fighter Tao Feng, or even Dead or Alive, just minus all the girls. As it stands though, it will go down as one of the worst fighters on the console and something I will not ever miss playing again. That's all for this week's video. One more game before we wrap up Bad Game Summer. What will it be? What's the plan after that? Tune in next week to find out. Same crap time, same crap channel.